Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. My name is Kings Floyd. My pronouns are she, her. I am the Research and Policy Associate at the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, or the DEJC, here at the Century Foundation. I present as a white female with brown glasses and brown hair using a power wheelchair. Today, I am in a pink scarf and a maroon blazer. We are here today to celebrate the one-year anniversary of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, or as many of you know, the DEJC, or the CoLab. You may be wondering, what is the CoLab? Especially because we're celebrating 1 year of progress. What progress did we make? So DEJC is a first of its kind initiative bringing together more than 40 leading disability rights and justice organizations, Washington, D.C. based think tanks, advocacy organizations, and top research and policy organizations committed to finally achieving economic security and justice for people with disabilities in the United States, more than 3 decades after the Americans with Disabilities Act became law. We are incredibly excited to celebrate the 1 year anniversary. As I've said, we are celebrating our 1 year of collective progress, and we will tell you about the progress we have made, as well as the progress we hope to make. We do have a saying here at the CoLab that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but I'd like to bring forward anyways. It is the North Star of our team. So the phrase is, every policy is disability policy. What does that mean? For our team, it means that every policy that we come across, that we interact with, has an intersectionality with disability rights, with disability inclusion. Many of you would think of this analogy as the curb cut effect. A curb cut creates a more inclusive, equitable society by benefiting everyone, whether they're in a wheelchair, a stroller, a bike, whether they are a delivery person making a delivery with a dolly, even those electric scooters that cause their own accessibility issues, they create opportunities for those. Inclusive design and universal design as a foundational aspect of disability rights and disability inclusion is fundamental to creating a more equitable society. When you design things that are more accessible, you design everything for the better. And now I am absolutely thrilled to turn it over to Congressman Bobby Scott.
Hello, I'm Congressman Bobby Scott of Virginia's 3rd Congressional District, and I serve as the Democratic leader for the House Committee on Education and the Workforce. I want to congratulate the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative on its 1 year anniversary and its commitment to achieving economic security and justice for people with disabilities in the United States. As lawmakers and advocates, we have a responsibility to ensure that people with disabilities have access to a rewarding career. Unfortunately, the 14C sub-minimum wage provision under the Fair Labor Standards Act is a relic of an era when employers were legally permitted to discriminate against individuals with disabilities in the workplace, and workers with disabilities did not have access to federal protections. These certificates have effectively eliminated the minimum wage protections for workers with disabilities. For many of these workers, the estimated hourly wage is roughly $3.50, and for many, it's even less. It is far past the time that we phase out this harmful provision that denies equal opportunities for workers with disabilities. During my time in Congress, I've spent years dedicated to realizing a fully integrated and competitive workforce. In January, a GAO report found that employer and worker participation in the 14C program has declined. Further, we know that there are workers still struggling to find appropriate and meaningful alternatives. So in response, I reintroduced the bipartisan, bicameral Transformation to Competitive Integrated Employment Act. This bill would incentivize states and employers who currently use the 14C certificates to work with the disability community towards updating the business models and creating fully integrated and competitive employment opportunities. It would also ensure the availability of integrated services and supports that foster community integration. I'm hopeful that one day it can become law. In the meanwhile, I'm encouraged that more and more states are abandoning the 14C certificates. However, legislative progress is not possible without strong advocates, such as those at the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, who have been a consistent voice for eliminating 14C and empowering people with disabilities. Together, we can ensure that Americans with disabilities have access to full participation in American life. So congratulations again, and thank you for your advocacy on behalf of people with disabilities.
Thank you, Congressman Scott, for your leadership in Congress and as a champion for people with disabilities across the United States. I'm Kimberly Noxted, and I'm the director of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative and director of our team at the Century Foundation.
And I'm Rebecca Vallis. I am a co-founder and a senior advisor to the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative. And we're thrilled to welcome you to this one-year anniversary event of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, marking a year of collective progress for disability economic justice.
Thank you to everyone for joining us today. We especially want to thank the more than 40 members of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative for embarking on the journey we've taken over the past year.
This is the first time that a collaborative of this type has existed, bringing together leaders from across the think tank and research community, together with leaders across the disability rights and justice community to work together, learn from each other, and work collaboratively to bring a disability lens across all policymaking in the U.S. None of this work would be possible without the members who make up the collaborative. And so we're so excited to celebrate this first year with all of you.
We look forward to what will be an engaging and timely set of conversations today about where we've been, where we're at today, and where we're headed in this next chapter of work. And without further ado, we are thrilled to pass the mic to our president and CEO of the Century Foundation, Mark Zuckerman. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Kim and Rebecca, and welcome everybody. I'm so glad you could join us today. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Century Foundation, we are a progressive, independent think tank that drives policy change to improve people's lives. We pursue economic, racial, gender, and disability equity for all people in the country in education, healthcare, and work. Our economic team at TCF has been doing remarkable work to build an economy that works for everyone. A couple of years ago, we acted to address a critical piece of economic justice work that needed more attention at TCF, the direct perspectives and experiences of the 61 million people with disabilities. We've made it our anthem to ensure that the economy works for them too, because every policy is a disability policy. And we know that today our economy is failing disabled people. That's why a year ago, we celebrated the launch of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, an effort spearheaded by TCF's very own Disability Economic Justice team. Today, we celebrate a year of collective progress in bringing a disability lens to our economic policy priorities and centering the voices of disabled people in all our work. We are proud to be doing this important work alongside the remarkable members of the collaborative, which includes leaders from across the disability community, partners from think tanks, researchers, and advocacy champions. I want to thank each of you for joining us today to celebrate our one-year anniversary. And I also want to thank our partners at the Ford Foundation, JP Morgan Chase, and all of you who have participated. I want to end with some thoughts of the remarkable Judy Heumann. She wrote that change never happens at the pace we think it should. It happens over years of people joining together, strategizing, sharing, and pulling all the levers they possibly can. Gradually, excruciatingly slowly, things start to happen. And then suddenly, seemingly out of the blue, something will tip. And she instructed on how to make this happen. When other people see you as a third-class citizen, the first thing you need is a belief in yourself and the knowledge that you have rights. The next thing you need is a group of friends to fight back with. At TCF, we're those friends, friends for life. Thank you so much for joining us today, and back to you, Kings.
Wow, Mark, thank you so much. Incredible words. I know many of us we're privileged enough to know Judy in her life. And I also know I am personally privileged to be at TCF and to have this group of feisty disabled people to fight back with. Now let's hear from some of the leaders of the organizations that are members of the collaborative. The Center for Law and Social Policy, JP Morgan Chase, and the Urban Institute.
I'm Indi Dattagupta, President and Executive Director of CLASP, the Center for Law and Social Policy. And I'm proud to help mark the one-year anniversary of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative. Today, we celebrate 1 year of building community and understanding around what people need to thrive, how we can make workplaces and communities fully accessible, and what it means to center people with disabilities in economic policy. CLASP is proud to be a partner in the collaborative, which has brought together a powerful group of advocates and researchers to foster partnerships and help build an understanding of how economic justice and disability are intrinsically connected. The collaborative is helping us build our knowledge and identify and develop policy solutions that support people with disabilities experiencing poverty. Solutions like improvements to the SSI program, greater pay for home and healthcare workers, expanded mental health supports for children and adults, and a universal paid leave program. These issues underscore that there is no economic justice without disability justice, and there's no disability justice without economic justice. Thank you.
Congratulations to the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative on a terrific first year, bringing together more than 40 leading disability organizations and top leaders in research, policy, and business, committed to achieving greater economic security for the 1 in 4 Americans living with some type of disability. JP Morgan Chase is proud to be working with the collaborative to support the disability community as both an employer, advancing inclusive workplaces and careers, and as a business committed to serving our customers with disabilities. We also recognize that we need better public policy in order to help more people with disabilities fully participate in the economy. And we look forward to working with all of you to advance measures that help them work, save, support their families, and pursue their dreams. We look forward to our continued partnership in the year ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kimberlyn Leary. I'm a Senior Vice President at the Urban Institute, and it's my great pleasure to congratulate the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative on its 1-year anniversary. Here at the Urban Institute, we've launched our own Disability Equity Policy Initiative last year. We call it DEPI. And DEPI is working to build a body of evidence to improve the lives of disabled persons. As researchers, we understand that when disparities are not documented, they can be invisible to policymakers. So we're working to bring a more focused disability lens to Urban's research. We want to center the voices of disabled people in our research, and we want to make sure that we are thinking intersectionally about disability in the context of multiple identities. Our initiative aims to equip policymakers, advocates, and practitioners, like members of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative, with rigorous, timely, and actionable research they need in order to advance economic mobility, housing stability, and a more accessible and equitable public safety net. So congratulations again on your 1-year anniversary, and we're excited about what's to come.
I'd like to welcome our panel of speakers representing the collaborative and leading advocacy work with a disability lens. Each of these panelists bring a unique perspective to their role in the collaborative and how they reflect on disability economic justice in their work. I'm pleased to turn it over to my wonderful colleague and today's panel moderator, Emily Ladau.
Thank you so much, Kings. And hi, everyone. Again, I'm Emily Ladow. I am the editor of the Voices of Disability Economic Justice Project. And today I have both the honor and the pleasure of getting to be in conversation with such a powerhouse panel of speakers from the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative as we're together to celebrate the past year of being in community with each other. Each of these speakers brings with them such a distinct perspective and so many incredible stories to share. Our speakers help represent our evolution and our progression as a collaborative. And these members have been with us since the launch, members that are helping drive ideas through working groups, they're broadening perspectives on disabilities, and new members as we continue to grow. And as a passionate storyteller whose work centers on supporting people in telling their stories, I couldn't be more excited to be here today to help amplify the voices of our speakers. Because by sharing our stories, we can create connections and pathways towards true economic justice and equity for people with disabilities in the United States. So without further ado, let's get started. And I would like to begin with an introductory question for all of the panelists. So when you answer, if you could also give a little introduction of yourself to start out with your name, visual description, pronouns, organization, and title. And that reminds me to do a visual description quickly for myself. I am a white woman. I have brown curly hair pulled to the side in a ponytail. I am wearing black rimmed glasses, a pink sweater, and a black and white floral top. So now on to introductions, as well as this question that I would like to pose for all of you. So as we know, just last month, we lost an icon in our community, Judy Heumann, who was known to so many as the godmother of disability rights, and she significantly impacted so many of our lives. She really leaves us with a legacy to build on and so much work to continue. So as you're introducing yourself, can you also just share a few words about how you plan to continue Judy's legacy and how her work has impacted you? So Dom, let's start with you.
Thanks, Emily. My name is Dom Kelly. I use he, him pronouns. I am the president and CEO and co-founder of New Disabled South and our 501c4 arm, New Disabled South Rising. I am a white man with curly brown hair, wearing a polo shirt that is half cream, half pink with tan pinstripes, and I'm sitting in front of a dark green couch with gray pillows and a yellow blanket. And I love this question because I'm a member of the ADA generation. I was born a year after the ADA was signed into law. I have been disabled since birth. I have cerebral palsy, and I grew up with the accommodations that I needed in school to be able to learn. And without the work of Judy, I would not have had a 504 plan in school or an IEP. I would not have been able to grow up and live in the society the same way that, if I had been born even 10 years prior to that. So I am a direct beneficiary of the work that Judy did. And my hope in leading a disability rights and disability justice organization is that we can continue that legacy, continue to make some good trouble in the ways that Judy did, that if that means we have to go crawl up the steps of the Georgia Capitol or go to Alabama and yell at people and whatever we have to do to make noise to fight for our rights. I try to take a page from Judy and the folks who came came before my generation, who have been fighting for disabled people for a long time. And so I hope we can kind of continue that work.
Thank you, Dom. And as someone who is also a direct beneficiary of Judy's work and born right after the ADA, I completely relate to what you were saying. So I would like to pass it on next to Claire for an intro and to share a little bit about Judy's legacy and how it impacts you.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. My name is Claire Guzdar. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Managing Director of Campaigns and Partnerships at Groundwork Collaborative. To be honest, I haven't been that familiar with Judy. I've been much more familiar with her good friend, Marka Bristow. I live in Chicago, and my dad has served on the board of Access Living. And it's been a real joy, thinking about this question to learn more about Judy and her friendship with Marka. And I think, one thing that's really stood out to me that I'd love to share is something that Marka and Judy had in common. I am a Catholic and a person who really believes in the power of institutions, but who's also very frustrated often by the way those institutions wield power to promote the status quo. And something that Marka and Judy really inspire me to do is think of being a member of institutions as an opportunity to create change, to wield power, to create more access and more space and more support for more types of people, and not to acquiesce to the power of the institution to promote the status quo. So really grateful for the question and learning more about Judy's legacy over the last few weeks.
Thank you so much, Claire. And Nisha, I'd love to hear from you next.
Hi, my name is Nisha McCrae. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Education Director of COVID-19 Long Haulers Advocacy Project, otherwise known as C19 Lab. And visual description. So my visual description is that I'm an African-American female wearing 2-strand twists that are black and brown that are in a shoulder length formation in order to cup my face. I am wearing black headphones and a very unusual mixed match quilt pattern dress is what you can see from above the screen. And I will say that I was not a direct influenced by Judy's work. I'm kind of the second generation who's experienced the down or the trickle down effect of Judy's work when it comes to disability rights and advocacy. And what I mean by that is, as an African-American female, a lot of the first wave of that didn't reach our communities until the second generation. However, the legacy she left behind of intersectional movements and making sure that you include as many people under the big tent as possible is something that was in my work before I became disabled with long COVID, and now with my work with C19 Lab. And I think the importance of that intersectionality of it doesn't matter if you look like me, we have the same religion, background, experiences, or education. What's more important is that we all understand that this affects all of us and our loved ones, and this is something we need to move forward with. And I think that's the legacy that I hope to continue to carry with my work as the Education Director of C19 Lab.
Nisha, that was so powerful. Thank you for sharing. And finally, Sue, can you wrap us up with your intro?
Sure. I'm Sue Popkin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an Institute Fellow at the Urban Institute, and I'm also the co-director of our still very new Disability Equity Policy Initiative. I am an older white woman with salt and pepper hair that's curly. I'm wearing a blue shirt and a blue and green scarf and glasses. And behind me, you can see a fake backdrop of the Urban Institute in front of a door that is now accessible, but was not accessible when we moved in. So I have Sjogren's disease and I use a cane. So I was the person pushing for that. I didn't know Judy Heumann that long. I met her in 2021 through another friend. And like so many people who spoke about Judy when she passed, I considered her a friend and a mentor almost from the get-go. She was just an amazing person making connections like that. Judy is the reason that we have a Disability Equity Policy Initiative at Urban Institute. She did an event with us in 2021, and she spoke to the president of the Urban Institute about what Urban Institute should be doing and why we should be taking a disability equity lens to all of our research. And through the whole event, if you go back and watch it, she is telling us what we should be doing in every single answer that she gave to every question. And when that was over, I was able to convince our leadership that we really should be doing that. This is really important. And I see myself carrying on her legacy by moving this forward. And the last thing I'll say is, I guess I didn't even know at the time, but personally, our child benefited because our child needed special education services and an IEP. And as difficult as all of that was, we wouldn't have been able to get those services without the legacy she left.
Thank you, Sue. And it's so wonderful to get to know all of you a little better through your answers and to hear the power in the work that you're doing. So now let's move on. I have some questions for each of you, and I'm really excited to get to them. So Dom, I'd like to move on to you for the next question. You recently founded New Disabled South, which is amazing. Congratulations. And you're one of the newer members of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative. So we're really thrilled to have your voice and perspective at our table. And I'm wondering if you could take a moment to talk about the work of New Disabled South and specifically talk about how you're working to bring a disability justice lens to improve lives and develop policy solutions for people in the South.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. First of all, I'm thrilled to be a part of the collaborative. So New Disabled South is focusing on a regional strategy, something that we don't have in the disability space, and that we've needed for a long time, especially here in the South. We've seen that so many of the issues that folks in where I live in Georgia face, disabled people in Georgia face the same issues that we face in Mississippi and in Louisiana and elsewhere in our region. Oftentimes it's the consequences of policy choices. It's the consequences of a deprioritization of the disability community at the state and local level. So our work is really focused on taking that regional view of disability rights and disability justice, bringing folks together to one table, sort of like the collaborative here, and tackling some of these major issues. So the core of our work is called the Southern Disability Justice Coalition, and we're bringing together organizers, activists, organizations across 14 Southern states to the same table to share resources, share knowledge, talk about strategy, so that we can approach some of these issues together rather than in silos. We also do our own policy advocacy work. We are investing in research, desperately needed research into some really core issues that disabled folks in the South are facing. We have 3 kind of priority buckets where we are working in. The first is this idea of poverty and care, which we really feel goes hand in hand, especially here in the South, with a primary focus on home and community-based services, and how we can expand access to care for people with disabilities across our region. That includes the hundreds of thousands of people who are on waiting lists for waivers. We are looking at the criminalization of Black and Brown disabled people in rural parts of our region. That's a primary focus of our research work. And then we're also looking at how we can expand access to the ballot box, civic participation and democracy. So we know, especially here in the South, there are plenty of barriers that prevent disabled people from voting. So I would say it is critical for us as an organization to have a disability lens, because we are a disability-led, disability-focused organization, but also we are working with policymakers, we are working with other organizations, cross-movement folks, on how they can expand their focus on disability, how they can approach their work from a disability justice lens, make sure to center the voices of the most marginalized in our community, and really focus on lifting disabled people out of poverty and giving them more opportunities. So that's a little bit about kind of what we're working on.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's clear that the work that you're doing is really shifting the narrative, which is a perfect transition into our next question. I'm going to turn to you, Claire, because you are such an incredible member of one of our working groups in the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative that's focused on this kind of narrative change. And this pillar of work specifically focuses on shifting the persistent narrative around disability, which is makers, takers, fakers, that is so difficult for us to move beyond. So, Claire, could you just take a moment to talk about the work of Groundwork Collaborative and also what it means to be bringing a disability lens to your work, both through the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative and beyond?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for the question. So at Groundwork, we are working to advance a coherent and persuasive progressive economic worldview. And, the reason that we do that is probably very familiar to you all. The power of neoliberalism, that is a perspective that says that the free market is going to deliver the strongest economy. Neoliberalism is an obstacle to everything that we want and need. And so Groundwork is really working to advance an alternate worldview. And the crux of our economic worldview is kind of three pillars. Our economy will be strongest and most stable for everyone when we build accountable public power, when we curb concentrations of private wealth and power, and when we center the communities who for too long have been locked out of abundance. And at Groundwork, that's Black and Brown folks, that's women and non-binary folks, it's disabled folks, it's immigrants, it's all folks who have been kind of locked out of abundance for too long. And so, I came to this work because we are at Groundwork narrative change experts. We're not disability experts. And so what I really love about the work we do at the collaborative, it's a true mutual learning relationship. I can share what we've learned at Groundwork about narrative change, about how to successfully tell resonant stories for great impact on economic policy. And I can learn more from our collaborative partners about how to better integrate disability justice into the work that we do. So I think, at Groundwork, we've been historically really strong at centering racial justice and gender justice in our work. And one way that we can do better on the disability justice front is to draw those connections, the intersectionality across identities more explicitly. And I really look forward to doing that and learning how to do that better by sitting at the collaborative table and learning more from our partners.
Claire, I really appreciate you sharing the power and importance of centering people who are most impacted. And I think that that's a perfect transition into our next question. Nisha, it's for you, because as you mentioned in your introduction, you're part of the COVID-19 Long Hauler Advocacy Project, and that's a nonprofit that works to advance understanding of long COVID and to find solutions for individuals and families. And so many of us now refer to the pandemic as a mass disabling event. We're referencing the significant long-term impact of COVID-19. So here's my question for you. So many people live with chronic illnesses, but they might not always think of themselves as quote unquote disabled in the sense that we understand the word. But we're trying to create this big tent approach to disability through the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you view the chronic illness and long COVID community as part of the larger disability community, and tell us why that's so important.
Thank you. I would say from my perspective, when I look at the C19 Long Hauler Advocacy Project community and patient population, they've been experiencing long COVID and its associated conditions since approximately early 2020. And so over the past 3+ years, we have members who are having that internal struggle with the definition of disability and having the label of disabled. And every population member is different. But what I've noticed across our community is that it depends how they accept that definition and if they can see themselves as part of the disabled community at large. And I think a large part of that is because the disability community or disabled community has been siloed from other sections of society for so long that a lot of us haven't realized that our common goals and needs are aligned with each other in order to do that big tent approach that we want with long COVID communities, aligning themselves with DEJ Collab, et cetera. And I think for me personally, I could speak on my experience in my family coming from the rural South. We understood what disability was, but I earlier mentioned that I was second generation of this knowledge because the first wave of that understanding didn't really reach our communities. We knew about it. We know that someone can be considered disabled due to cognitive, behavioral, or physical limitations, or those that are not considered economically worthy or beneficial to the workforce by society. However, for us, accepting the term of disability or disabled was an economic decision because we knew as soon as we put that label of disability on ourselves or on others, we knew we were telling society that they are not ready to participate in the workforce. And we already know that women, people of color, those who have other designations, LGBTQ+, etc., already make less compared to those who are considered the prototypical workforce member or the desired member of society. So us adding an additional label was an economic decision. And I know my personal struggle, my mother's struggle, my father's struggle when we developed a chronic illness, my father cancer, my mother lupus, myself long COVID. It was the economic decision that was tied with that label. So what I try to do with my work as education director of C19 Lab is educating people that regardless of how you were raised or what your definition of disability is, you are disabled due to long COVID. And because of that, we need to align ourselves with the disability community because their wants and needs are our wants and needs. And we need to stop looking as if we're this siloed group, and we need to look at our brethren across the spectrum and realize we all want a quality of life that allows for us to pursue happiness and not be destitute.
Nisha, I really appreciate you pointing to the fact that we cannot take any of this work in a silo or a vacuum. And I so often remind people that every issue is a disability issue because every issue impacts disabled people. And so taking that big tent approach is crucial. And I think this brings us well to our next question. So Sue, the Urban Institute, it's a large nonprofit research organization, and it does work across so many sectors, but bringing a disability lens to that work is relatively new. And I think we should first be applauding the work of you and your team because we're excited about what you've accomplished so far. And we really want to dig in further on that specific research. So in particular, the Urban Institute recently released research that elevated the perspectives of disabled people regarding barriers they've encountered in the housing market. And I'm hoping that you can speak to some of the key strategies that you're using to advance disability justice and housing justice simultaneously.
Okay, thank you. As you said, we're relatively new to this. The project that you're talking about, we did in partnership with another DEJC member, the Kelsey, and it really was an attempt to change our approach to doing. Urban Institute does lots of large data analysis projects, lots of charts, lots of graphs, right? Big data sets. And we were changing our approach to how we do our usual business by taking a disability-led approach to doing the work. We had a national advisory board of people with disabilities for this project on barriers to housing that was using census data, so big data sets. And they reviewed our research questions. They helped us review our results. And they really changed, I think, how we did the work. And it changed the questions, it improved the questions that we asked. I think a couple of ways that was really important is that the people on our advisory board pointed out what was missing from the census data. This is the best we have available. This is what we're going to use. And they said, but that's leaving out people who live in institutions, people who are incarcerated, children, large groups of people with disabilities. And so we weren't able to merge other data in to improve that, but we could acknowledge it and say that this is something that needs to be improved in the future. We could acknowledge that the questions the census uses to measure disability are inadequate. They don't capture chronic illness, for example, and that they need to be expanded. And I think it also changed the way we thought about in analyzing our results because we had to be able to explain what we were doing to people who don't look at tables all day, don't do math all day, and figure out a way to present it in a way that wasn't intimidating, was that people could understand and interpret and make sense of. I'm really proud of how it came out. Despite the limitations of the data, it clearly showed it emphasized the huge problem people with disabilities face in finding housing and finding adequate housing. We've been using that piece in a lot of different ways, and I hope it's setting a model for what we'll continue to do at Urban.
Thank you, Sue. The data is so critical, and you are really leading the way with your team on that. And I cannot believe that on that note, we have already flown through this panel. And so we're coming to the end of our time together, but we do have time for one more question. So can you tell us, what does it mean to you to bring a disability lens to your work? And I know that we've touched on this a little bit, but I'd like to hear from each of you really what you're feeling and thinking in this moment. So actually, Sue, I'm going to go back to you and start with you first.
So I think taking a disability lens to our work really means changing how we do our work at Urban Institute. It means that when we are doing these data analyses, that we look at disability the same way we break out race, ethnicity, gender, and that we look at it as an aspect of human experience that affects people's economic outcomes that we should be considering across all, as you pointed out, we do research across a range of policy areas. We need to be looking at in every aspect of our work. And if I can bake that into the Urban Institute, by the time I retire, I will have succeeded.
Thank you, Sue. And over to you, Nisha. What does it mean to you to be bringing a disability lens to your work?
I think it's making sure we have more of an emphasis on taking a step back anytime we're creating any public communications or processes internally or trying to launch any initiatives, and taking that step back to go, I am more aware of the disabilities that I'm encountering on a daily basis and how that would affect my ability to process or absorb or implement certain things. What are other disabilities that are suffering barriers to access the information we're trying to give, and how can we remove those barriers? I would say one of the more fortunate things about our community is that our community is vocal, and they let us know, like, hey, you forgot to do real-time closed captioning. That limited my participation. Or I can't really do Zoom for 2 hours. Is it possible we can break this meeting into 2 meetings? Those things have allowed for us to increase our impact because we've taken a stronger disability lens, because we have to take one because of ourselves, as selfishly motivated as that is. But it's allowed for us to be so much more effective and impactful that I don't see my work with C19 LAP or in my personal life going back. And I think that's how disability lens applies to my work.
Nisha, I think you're so right that breaking down access barriers and creating access really brings everybody into the conversation and makes it better for everyone. And on that note, Claire, I want to turn it over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think applying a disability lens to the work at Groundwork will mean 2 things for me. First, that members of the disability community and our partners in disability justice work see themselves in the work that Groundwork does. Not just, in the data and the analysis that we do, but in the panels that we host and the events that we put on. Race and gender have been central identity foci for us in the past, and we're really needing to increase the intersectionality of the work that we do. So looking forward to that. And then I also just, as a narrative change organization that works on progressive economic justice, I want our partners in the disability community to feel like our work improves their work. That feels really important to me.
I love that. And we can absolutely all build on each other's work. And so finally, last but not least, Dom, turning it over to you.
Yeah, I think that it means that we can save lives, literally save lives. 1 in 4 adults in this country have a disability. The issues that we are focusing on are critical to people being able to live independent, full lives. If we talk about economic justice, we can't talk about economic justice without talking about lifting disabled people out of poverty who live in poverty at twice the rate of non-disabled people. We can't talk about economic justice without talking about food security. hospitals closing in rural parts of our country, in our region. People don't have access to affordable and accessible transportation. Black and brown people are murdered by the police at alarming rates. Black and brown disabled people at alarming rates across this country. I mean, the list goes on. And so if we take a disability lens, you know, our work is disability. We do disability rights and disability justice work, but if everybody in our sector took a disability lens to their work, we could literally save lives. We could influence our lawmakers. We could influence those in power to care about the disability community and the issues that impact us. And we could see less people living in poverty, more people having opportunities for employment, for buying houses. I mean, the list goes on, but it is critical and it is life-saving.
It is life-saving, truly a mic drop moment to close us out. And I just want to say what an absolute privilege it has been to get to guide this incredible conversation today. And I want to specifically thank all of our panelists, Dom, Claire, Nisha, and Sue, for sharing such powerful insights. And I really want to thank everyone who's joining us to learn from this amazing lineup. So my hope is that you're going to carry these gems of wisdom with you as we all continue to pursue and ultimately achieve disability economic justice. And so on that note, I'm going to send it back to you, Kings, to close out our event.
Thank you so much, Emily, for moderating. And wow, thank you to our incredible panelists for their insight and discussion. I think we have covered in so many ways the benefits that bringing a disability justice lens can contribute to the wider world, and not just our community, but everybody. So this concludes the scheduled part of our agenda. I personally am so grateful to have been able to participate and learn from this panel and this group, especially because I think it's important that as one of the Disability Economic Justice Collaborative's pillars is our learning agenda to continually pursue learning. I feel like we have really checked the box on that today, as well as created meaningful connections and dialogues about these conversations. I do want to say thank you to everyone who worked on this event, including TCF leadership and staff. Thank you to our captioner and our incredible team of interpreters. Thank you to our funders who, without this event, without whom not only this event, but this initiative, this team would not be possible. Thank you to our audience, which is why we do this. Thank you to our collaborative members, because we learn from you every day. Thank you to our representatives, our administration, our appointees, for being there to participate and celebrate with us. We hope you have an incredible rest of your day.